To be a worker for the Lord. I want to love and trust His holy word. I want to sing and pray and be busy every day in the vineyard of the Lord. I will work, I will pray in the vineyard of the Lord. I will work, I will pray, I will labor every day in the vineyard of the Lord.
Hello, I am back. By the grace of God, I just want to thank the Lord for another beautiful day. And today I am coming to read from the oracles of God. I will be reading from the New King James Version, and I'm going to start with Genesis 29, and I'll read 30 as well. So if you have your Bibles, let's get started. All right, Genesis 29. So Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. Verse 2. And he looked and saw a well in the field, and behold, there were 3 flocks of sheep laying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks. A large stone was on the well's mouth. Verse 3. Now all the flocks would be gathered there, and they would roll the stone from the well's mouth, water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place on the well's mouth. Verse 4. And Jacob said to them, My brethren, where are you from? And they said, We are from Haran. Verse 5. Then he said to them, Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. Verse 6. So he said to them, Is it well? And they said, He is well. And look, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep. Verse 7. Then he said, Look, it is still high day. It is not time for the cattle to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go and feed them. Verse 8. But they said, We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together, and they have rolled the stone from the well's mouth. Then we water the sheep. Verse 9. Now, while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Verse 10. And it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Verse 11. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. Verse 12. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rebekah's son. So she ran and told her father. Verse 13. Then it came to pass when Laban heard the report about Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. So he told Laban all the things. Verse 14. And Laban said to him, Surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him for a month. Verse 15. Then Laban said to Jacob, Because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what should your wages be? Verse 16. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Verse 17. Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. Verse 18. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. Verse 19. And Laban said, It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to another man. Stay with me. Verse 20. So Jacob served years for Rachel, and they seemed only a few days to him because of the love he had for her. Verse 21. Then Jacob said to Laban, Give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go into her. Verse 22. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. Verse 23. Now it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Verse 24. And Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. Verse 25. So it came to pass in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, What is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me? Verse 26. And Laban said, It must not be done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Verse 27. Fulfill her week, and we will give you this one also for the service which you will serve with me still another 7 years. Verse 28. Then Jacob did so and fulfilled her week. So he gave him his daughter Rachel as wife also. Verse 29. And Laban gave his maid, Bilhah, to his daughter Rachel as a maid. Verse 30. Then Jacob also went in to Rachel, and he also loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served Laban still another 7 years. Verse 31. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Verse 32. So Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, The Lord has surely looked on my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. Verse 33. Then she conceived again and bore a son, and said, Because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, he has therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. Verse 34. She conceived again and bore a son, and said, Now this time my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. Verse 35. And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, Now I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she stopped bearing. Okay, let's go on to Genesis 13. Now, when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, Give me children, or else I die. Verse 2. And Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel, and he said, Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? Verse 3. So she said, Here is my maid Bilhah. Go into her, and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her. Verse 4. Then she gave him Bilhah her maid as wife, and Jacob went into her. Verse 5. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Verse 6. Then Rachel said, God has judged my case, and he has also heard my voice and given me a son. Therefore she called his name Dan. Verse 7. And Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Verse 8. Then Rachel said, With great wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and indeed I have prevailed. So she called his name Naphtali. Verse 9. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took Zilpah her maid and gave her to Jacob as wife. Verse 10. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Verse 11. Then Leah said, A troop comes. So she called his name Gad. Verse 12. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Verse 13. Then Leah said, I am happy, for the daughters will call me blessed. So she called his name Asher. Verse 14. Now Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, Please give me some of your son's mandrakes. Verse 15. But she said to her, It is a small matter that you have taken away my husband. Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, Therefore he will lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. Verse 16. When Jacob came out of the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, You must come into me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. Verse 17. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Verse 18. Leah said, God has given me my wages, because I have given my maid to my husband. So she called his name Issachar. Verse 19. Then Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. Verse 20. And Leah said, God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. So she called his name Zebulun. Verse 21. Afterwards she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. Verse 22. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. Verse 23. And she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. Verse 24. So she called his name Joseph and said, The Lord shall add to me another son. Verse 25. And it came to pass, when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said to Laban, Send me away, that I may go to my own place and to my country. Verse 26. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, and let me go, for you know my service which I have done for you. Verse 27. And Laban said to him, Please stay, if I have found favor in your eyes, for I have learned my experience that the Lord has blessed me for your sake. Verse 28. Then he said, Name me your wages, and I will give it. Verse 29. So Jacob said to him, You know how I have served you, and how your livestock has been with me. Verse 30. For what you had before I came was little, and it is increased to a great amount. The Lord has blessed you since my coming, and now when shall I also provide for my own house? Verse 31. So he said, What shall I give you? And Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep your flocks." Verse 32. "Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from there all the speckled and spotted sheep, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and these shall be my wages." Verse 33. "So my righteousness will answer for me in time to come. When the subject of my wages comes before you, every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and brown among the lambs will be considered stolen, if it is with me." Verse 34. And Laban said, "Oh, that it were according to your word." Verse 35. So he removed that day the male goats that were speckled and spotted, all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had some white in it, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and gave them into the hands of his son. 36. Then he put 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. 37. Now Jacob took for himself rods of green poplar and of the almond and chestnut trees, peeled white strips in them, and exposed the white which was in the rods. Verse 38. And the rods which he had peeled he set before the flocks in the gutters, in the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, so that they should conceive when they come to drink. Verse 39. So the flocks conceived before the rods, and the flocks brought forth streaked, speckled, and spotted. Verse 40. Then Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face towards the streaked and all the brown in the flock of Laban. But he put his own flocks by themselves and did not put them with Laban's flock. Verse 41. And it came to pass, whenever the stronger livestock conceived, that Jacob placed the rods before the eyes of the livestock in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. Verse 42. But when the flocks were feeble, he did not put them in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger were Jacob's. 43. Thus the man became exceedingly prosperous, and had large flocks, female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. Thank you for your time and attention today. As always, be blessed. I love you, and I will talk with you soon. Have a good day. Bye.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound